December 19, 1944, Nancy, France. The German Signals Intelligence Company monitoring Third Army radio traffic has just recorded something that will determine the outcome of the Battle of the Bulge, and they do not know what they are listening to. The Intercept operators at Funkhorch Company 16, the German Army's dedicated radio intercept unit, assigned to monitor American Third Army communications in the Lorraine sector, a unit of 20 operators working in 3 shifts, each shift monitoring a specific set of frequencies on the assignment rotation that the company's technical officer has established to maximize coverage of the Third Army's known communication bands, using the Torn.eb, super heterodyne receivers that represent the best available German intercept technology, and the direction-finding equipment whose bearings the company has been using to maintain an accurate map of Third Army headquarters locations since September, are working a shift that has been anything but routine since December 16, when the Ardennes offensive began. Not quite accurate. Nothing about the last 3 days has been routine for the German Signals Intelligence Network in the Western Theater, which has been processing an avalanche of Allied communications whose volume and urgency reflect the strategic crisis that the Ardennes offensive has produced in every Allied headquarters from London to Luxembourg. The network's collection capacity has been strained by the requirement to simultaneously monitor the increased American First Army traffic in the penetration's northern shoulder, the British Second Army traffic, whose communications reflect the reorientation of forces to the Ardennes' northern edge, and the Third Army traffic in the Lorraine sector, whose continued monitoring has been assigned to Funkhorch Company 16 as its primary mission, even as the headquarters above it are consumed with the priority intelligence requirements of the developing battle. What the intercept operators are monitoring on December 19 is the specific and carefully managed radio traffic of the Third Army. The traffic whose volume, content, and pattern have been the primary source of German intelligence about the Third Army's dispositions and intentions since September. The traffic that German intercept analysis has been using to project the Third Army's operational plans with sufficient accuracy that the German defensive preparation in the Lorraine sector has been consistently oriented toward the axis that the intercept analysis has projected. The traffic pattern change at 16:30 hours is specific and anomalous. The volume drops sharply, not the gradual taper that end-of-shift traffic patterns produce, but a sudden reduction whose cause the intercept operators cannot determine from the available information. The traffic that has been present is not present. The frequencies that have been active are not active. The communications that the German analysis has learned to associate with specific Third Army Corps and Division headquarters are no longer generating the activity that the analysis has been predicting at the level it has been predicting it. Something has changed on the other side of the line. The operators record the anomaly with the professional precision of men who have been trained to document exactly what they observe, rather than to interpret it before the observation is complete. The time, the frequency, the call signs that have gone silent, the traffic level before and after the anomaly, the duration of the anomalous silence. The documentation goes up the analysis chain. The analysis chain applies the established interpretive methodology to the anomaly, producing an assessment of what the anomaly most likely represents, weighted by the prior pattern analysis of Third Army communications behavior that the 2 years of collection have established as the interpretation baseline. By the time the analysis chain has processed the report and the intelligence assessment has been produced and distributed to the relevant German command headquarters, Army Group G's G2 section at its Trier headquarters, the First Army's intelligence officer at his forward command post, the LXXV Corps, whose sector has been adjacent to the Third Army's Saar River positions. The Third Army will be 40 miles north of where the analysis has placed it, moving on a route that the intercept operators have not predicted, and that the route selection's specific operational security measures have been designed from December 12 onward to prevent them from predicting. The German Signals Intelligence Network in the Western Theater in December 1944 is a system of formidable professional sophistication built over 5 years of the most intensive radio intercept war in military history. a war that has been conducted by both sides since September 1939, with the specific and escalating competitiveness of technical intelligence communities who understand that the communications of their opponent are the most direct available window into his intentions, and whose efforts to exploit that window on their side and to close it on the opponent's side have been producing the continual technical evolution that both the collection systems and the communications security measures of every major belligerent reflect in December 1944. Since 1939, the German Army's Funkaufklärung, radio reconnaissance, has been the primary technical intelligence collection system for every major campaign the Wehrmacht has conducted. From the collection of French radio traffic in the summer of 1940, whose patterns contributed to the French Army's operational picture before Sedan, to the systematic intercept of Soviet military communications that has provided the Wehrmacht's operational intelligence in the Eastern Front's most critical periods. The system is staffed by linguists, traffic analysts, direction-finding operators, and cryptanalysts, whose collective professional capability represents the accumulated expertise of 5 years of wartime signals intelligence collection against a growing range of opponents using a growing diversity of communication systems. Against the American Army, the German Intercept system has been developing its collection and analysis methodologies since the North African campaign's opening engagements at Kasserine and El Ghouta in late 1942 and early 1943, and by December 1944 has 2 years of American military radio traffic experience that the analysis protocols have been refining with each campaign's data. From the Sicilian campaign's radio traffic patterns that provided advance warning of the American 7th Army's movements before Palermo, to the Normandy and France campaigns whose radio traffic analyses have been providing Army Group B and Army Group G with the primary technical intelligence about American operational intentions that the German command has been using to allocate its defensive resources since the June 1944 invasion. The Funk-Horch Company operators who analyzed Third Army traffic in December 1944 have the most extensive archive of American military communications experience available to any intelligence system in the German order of battle. The American military's radio communication culture, the voice procedures, the call sign systems, the traffic volume patterns that different operational situations produce, the specific and documentable relationship between radio traffic characteristics and operational intentions, is a subject that the German Intercept system has been studying with the professional intensity of men whose operational intelligence output is the primary basis for the defensive planning of the formations they serve. They know what American radio traffic looks like when an army is planning an offensive. They know what it looks like when an army is in contact. They know what it looks like when an army is moving. The increased traffic on the logistics nets, the movement order traffic that coordinates vehicle convoys on road networks, the traffic control communications that manage the flow of military vehicles through junctions and over bridges. What they encounter at 16:30 hours on December 19 is something that the 2-year archive of American radio traffic experience has not provided them with a reference data point for, and that the 5-year archive of all wartime radio traffic experience has not provided them with a reference data point for either. What Third Army radio traffic looks like when the Third Army has just received a code word that has converted a drafted contingency plan into an executive operational order, and when the execution of that order has begun with a communications discipline whose specific and deliberate character has been designed by Patton's G2 and G3 sections to prevent the German intercept system from detecting what is happening before it is too late to respond to what is happening. The communications discipline that the Third Army applies to the Bastogne reorientation begins not on December 19, but on December 12, the day that Colonel Oskar Koch, Patton's G2, briefs his commander on the German buildup in the Eifel and recommends contingency planning for the eventuality of a German Ardennes offensive, a briefing that establishes for Patton the specific and operational requirement that the contingency planning must be conducted in a manner that does not generate the radio traffic whose detection would alert the German command that the Third Army is planning for a contingency, whose occurrence would require the operational response. The planning is preparing. thereby potentially influencing the German operational decision about whether to launch the Ardennes offensive at all. Patton accepts the logic and the security requirements simultaneously. On December 12th, Brigadier General Halley Maddox, the Third Army's G3, is told to begin developing 3 contingency plans for a Third Army reorientation northward. The plans are developed in the specific and deliberate communications silence that operational security requires. A silence that is not the natural silence of a headquarters at rest, but the imposed silence of a headquarters that is working intensively and that has specifically organized its work to produce no radio traffic. The planning is conducted face-to-face among a small number of officers. Maddox and his key planners convene in person at Third Army headquarters in Nancy, where the geographical proximity of the principals makes radio communication unnecessary, and where the face-to-face meeting produces no signal that Funkhorch Company 16's operators can intercept. The written products of the planning, the draft orders, the route assignments, the logistics calculations, are classified at the SI level and distributed physically rather than transmitted electronically, carried by courier in the specific and old-fashioned but intercept-proof manner of pre-radio military communication. The development of the plans is concealed from the German intercept system not by any single dramatic security measure, but by the simple and effective measure of not generating the radio traffic that planning of this scale and complexity would normally generate. The German intercept system has been learning to detect American operational planning by the increase in radio traffic that planning activity generates. The coordination between staff sections, whose questions and answers require communication across the distances that separate them, the requests for logistical data that supply officers transmit to their depots, the movement orders that require communication between the planning headquarters and the unit headquarters being assigned missions, the map reference traffic that coordinates between the planning staff and the artillery whose fire support the operation requires, the signal plans that the communications officers coordinate with the units that will execute them. All of this traffic is the signature of planning. The German intercept system has been reading this signature reliably for 2 years. None of this traffic is generated in the Bastogne contingency planning because none of the coordination that normally requires radio communication is being conducted by radio. The same telephone wire that connects the Third Army's headquarters sections within the Nancy complex, the wire whose installation has been organized by the Third Army's Signal Battalion as one of the first priorities of each headquarters occupation, is carrying the planning discussions that the radio would otherwise carry, in a medium that the German intercept system's radio operators cannot access. The planning exists. The German intercept system does not know the planning exists, because the planning has been conducted in the only communication medium that the intercept system cannot monitor. The German intelligence estimate of December 19th, produced by the Army Group G intelligence section from the available technical intelligence sources, whose primary component is the Funkhorch Company's traffic analysis reports, says that the Third Army's primary axis of operation in the next week is the Saar River sector in Lorraine, where the 4th Armored Division and the 12th Corps are assessed as continuing their offensive toward the Siegfried Line that has been the primary Third Army operational effort since September. The estimate is wrong, not wrong about what the Third Army's dispositions currently are. The traffic analysis that has produced the estimate has been accurately reflecting the Third Army's Lorraine positions, but wrong about what the Third Army's intentions are, because the intentions that the radio traffic describes are the intentions of the Lorraine offensive that the radio traffic has been managing to describe accurately, and the intentions that exist in the planning documents at Nancy are the intentions whose radio traffic silence has prevented the estimate from detecting. The estimate is wrong because it has been built from radio traffic that accurately describes the Third Army's current dispositions, and that says nothing about a plan whose existence the radio traffic has been managed to conceal. December 19th, 1944. The Verdun War Room. Patton tells Eisenhower he can attack in 48 hours. Tells him this with the specific confidence of a man who knows it is true, because the plan already exists in the documents at Nancy. whose preparation has been completed before the crisis that makes the plan necessary has arrived, and who has been waiting for the command authority that the Verdun Conference's authorization provides to allow the plan to become an executive order. The code word that Patton transmits to Maddox at 3rd Army headquarters at 16:30 hours on December 19th, transmitted through the secure landline telephone that connects the Verdun conference room to the Nancy headquarters, audible to no German intercept operator, recordable by no direction-finding equipment, analyzable by no traffic analysis methodology, is not a complex communications event. It is a single word, transmitted in approximately 3 seconds of telephone conversation, converting an existing plan from a contingency document into an executive order that sets in motion the movement of 3 American divisions northward toward Bastogne, on routes that the planning has designated, through communications channels that the planning has secured, at a pace that the planning has calculated as achievable on the timeline that Patton has committed to in the Verdun war room. The radio silence that immediately follows the code word transmission is not a dramatic silence. It is simply the absence of traffic that would otherwise have been generated by the planning activity the code word has converted into execution. It is the silence of an army that has already done the coordination that the plan requires, in the face-to-face meetings and the physically distributed documents of the December 12 to December 19 planning period, and whose execution has already begun in the specific and operational form of the truck convoys, whose drivers have received their movement orders in person from their battalion commanders. The artillery units whose extraction from their Saar River positions has been coordinated by the Corps artillery officers who have driven to the unit positions to deliver the orders rather than transmitting them over the radio, and the combat teams assembling on the roads that the plan has designated as the routes to Bastogne, under the movement control of the military police, who have received their traffic control instructions in the briefing that the Third Army's Provost Marshal conducted at Nancy before the code word was transmitted. The Third Army is moving north. The German Intercept system is recording silence. The two facts are related in a way that the Intercept system's analysis will not fully resolve before the movement has achieved its objective. The German Intercept system records the anomalous traffic reduction at 16:30 hours with the professional attention of operators who have been trained to notice exactly this kind of change in traffic pattern. The analysis that follows is the analysis of men who are applying the methodologies their training and experience have established for interpreting traffic anomalies. The sudden reduction could indicate a communications compromise that has led the Americans to switch frequencies. It could indicate a major headquarters movement that has disrupted the communication infrastructure. It could indicate a planned communications exercise in which specific units go to radio silence to practice communications discipline. What the analysis does not produce is the interpretation that has happened, that the radio traffic has dropped, because the operational planning that the traffic would otherwise reflect has been completed before the traffic began, and that the Third Army is executing an operation whose radio traffic has been managed to a silence that the execution itself will not break until the force is too far north for the German command to respond to what the traffic eventually reveals. The German intercept officers cannot predict the route Patton chose to reach Bastogne, because the route exists in planning documents that have never generated the radio traffic that the prediction requires. December 21st, 1944. The Arlon approaches, Belgium. The 4th Armored Division's Combat Command B, under Brigadier General William Roberts, has been on the road for 36 hours, moving north from its Lorraine positions on routes that the Third Army's movement orders have designated, and that the division's own communications officers have been managing with the specific and disciplined radio protocol that the movement order specifies. The protocol is not silence. The division cannot move its armor and its infantry and its artillery across 60 miles of Belgian road network in December weather without communications, and the attempt to do so would produce the specific and dangerous operational confusion of a moving formation whose components cannot coordinate their positions and intentions with each other. The protocol is minimum essential communications, the traffic required to maintain column integrity and prevent vehicle collisions, and manage the traffic control issues that 400 vehicles on iced Belgian roads produce. Conducted on frequencies and with call signs, whose association with the 4th Armored Division, the 3rd Army's signals officer, has managed by the systematic rotation that prevents the German intercept analysis from identifying the unit behind the call sign. The German intercept system is receiving the traffic. The direction-finding operators are acquiring bearings on the transmission sources with their crossed baseline direction-finding equipment, plotting the bearings on their operational maps, triangulating the source locations with the accuracy that their equipment provides. The analysis section is attempting to associate the traffic with the unit designations that the call sign analysis has established as likely candidates, working through the association methodology that has been reliably producing unit identifications from American traffic since Tunisia. The analysis section is doing this correctly. The direction-finding bearings are accurate. The call sign analysis methodology is sound. The traffic volume is consistent with what a moving armored formation generates. What the analysis section cannot do is associate the traffic with the 4th Armored Division, because the call signs the 4th Armored is using today are not the call signs the 4th Armored was using yesterday when the German analysis established its call sign associations. The 3rd Army's signals officer, Colonel Elton Hammond, has implemented the call sign rotation that the Communications Security Plan specifies for this operation, changing every call sign in the 3rd Army's order of battle at the moment the operation begins, so that the German analysis's established associations are no longer valid. The frequency plan the 4th Armored is operating on today is not the frequency plan it was operating on yesterday, because the same Communications Security Plan has rotated frequencies simultaneously with call signs, invalidating the frequency-to-unit associations that the German analysis has built from months of collection. The communication patterns it is generating today are consistent with a half-dozen different American formations whose presence in Belgium the German analysis has not projected from the available order of battle intelligence, because the patterns have been specifically designed by Hammond's section to be ambiguous about the unit identity while providing the minimum essential operational information that the division's movement requires. The Germans know a large American formation is moving in southern Belgium. They do not know it is the 4th Armored Division. They do not know it is moving to Bastogne. The near failure in the 3rd Army's communications security, the moment when the German intercept analysis comes closest to identifying the Bastogne relief operation and providing the German command with the intelligence that would allow it to reinforce the blocking positions on the southern approaches before the 4th Armored reaches them, arrives on December 23rd, when the weather clears and American tactical air resumes operations over the Ardennes. The resumption of close air support operations generates a specific and substantial increase in air-to-ground radio traffic. The forward air controllers communicating with the P-47s, the P-47s communicating with each other, the close air support coordination net, whose traffic the German intercept system has been monitoring since Normandy, and whose patterns the analysis has learned to associate with American ground force positions and movements. The air-to-ground traffic on December 23 is associated, by the German analysis, with a ground force in the area south of Bastogne, a ground force whose presence in that area the German defensive planning has not projected, and whose identification the traffic analysis cannot establish with certainty because the security protocols governing the air support coordination communications have been followed by the forward air controllers with the discipline that the 3rd Army's communications security instruction has specified. The Germans know something is south of Bastogne. They do not know it is the 4th Armored Division in 3 combat commands, advancing on converging routes. They do not know the route any of the combat commands have taken to arrive in their current positions. They do not know that the ground force whose air support they are monitoring is the force that has been missing from the Lorraine sector for 4 days. And the interpretation of the December 23 traffic anomaly, the increase rather than the decrease that December 19's anomaly produced, arriving in the analysis queue alongside the increased air traffic from the fighter-bomber operations over the Falaise and Dinant areas, the increased signal intelligence traffic from the Piper encirclement at La Glaise, and the ongoing analysis of the penetration's main axis east of the Meuse is an interpretation that arrives at the German headquarters in the Ardennes, at a time when the operational situation on every axis is producing intelligence requirements that exceed the analysis section's capacity to process all of them simultaneously with the priority that each of them deserves. The south of Bastogne traffic gets processed. It receives an assessment. The assessment says, unknown American formation in the area south of Bastogne, strength indeterminate, possible reinforcement of German blocking positions opposition. The assessment does not say, the 3rd Army's 4th Armored Division is 72 hours from punching through your encirclement. The 4th Armored Division's Combat Command Reserve, under Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, the man who will command the United States Army in Vietnam, and whose name will eventually be given to the tank that the post-Vietnam Army builds from the lessons of the armored warfare that Abrams is in the middle of conducting, reaches the village of Assenois on December 26 and punches through the German encirclement line south of Bastogne at 16:45 hours, with the combined arms assault that Abrams personally leads from the front of the column. The specific route that Combat Command Reserve has followed from Arlon to Assenois, the route selection that Abrams and his staff have made from the available options in the 3rd Army's movement order, modified in the field by the specific tactical situations that the advance has encountered, and by the route reconnaissance that the division's engineers have been conducting ahead of the column's movement, is not the route that the German analysis of the approaching American force has projected as most likely. The German defensive positions at Chaumont, occupied by elements of the 5th Parachute Division, whose specific mission is to block the southern approaches to Bastogne from the Arlon area, and whose preparation of the Chaumont position has been conducted with the professional thoroughness of a formation that has been told it must hold this position against the relief attempt, whose coming the German command has known is inevitable. Since December 24, when the 3rd Army's movement north became undeniable, from the reports of forward German units in contact with American forces south of the Ardennes, whose strength the intelligence has not fully characterized, and whose blocking of the direct northern approach has forced Abrams to flank east rather than pressing north on the primary route, have been the most serious tactical obstacle of the advance. The German preparation of the Chaumont position has been based on the route analysis that the German defensive planning has conducted without the benefit of knowing exactly which formation is approaching from the south, on exactly which route, using the road network assessment of the southern approaches to Bastogne and the terrain analysis that the 5th Parachute Division's engineers have conducted of the available cover and fields of fire on each approach road. The position covers the primary route. It does not cover the eastern flank route with the same thoroughness. Abrams takes the eastern flank. The German route prediction has been built from the road network analysis of the approaches to Bastogne from the south, weighted by the projected preferences of an American armored formation moving from the Arlon area and selecting between the available northern routes on the basis of road surface quality and trafficability in December conditions. The prediction is wrong, not because the road network analysis is wrong, the analysis of the available roads is accurate, but because the specific decisions that Abrams makes in the field on December 22 and December 23 and December 24, in response to the specific and local tactical situations that the advance has encountered, have modified the route that the column is actually following from the route that the planning has designated and that the German analysis has projected as most likely. Route selection in a live armored advance is not the execution of a predetermined route, however carefully the predetermined route has been selected. It is a continuous series of decisions made by the commander closest to the ground, the battalion commander in the lead vehicle, whose visibility is the lead tank's vision blocks, the combat command commander whose jeep is following the lead platoon's tracks, the regimental S3 who is receiving the engineer reconnaissance reports of the roads ahead and translating them into route modifications on his map, who can see what the road and the weather and the enemy have produced ahead of the lead vehicle, and who is modifying the route plan in response to what he sees. These decisions are the decisions that no signals intelligence analysis can predict, because they are made in real time from information that has not yet been reported to any headquarters and that is not generating any radio traffic at the moment it is being acted on. The decision to flank Chaumont to the east, rather than press north on the primary route, is made by Abrams personally, in the 30 seconds that the tactical situation at Chaumont provides for the decision, based on the map in his hand and the burning Shermans ahead of him, and the assessment that the east flank is passable, that the combat engineer's oral report has provided in the 3 minutes before the decision. The decision is not transmitted by radio. It is implemented by the vehicles behind Abrams that can see the column turning east and that follow. It does not appear in the German Intercept record. It appears only in the operational outcome that the German blocking force at Chaumont discovers when it finds that the American column has bypassed its position and is now north of it on the road to Bastogne. The legacy of the German signals intelligence failure in the Bastogne relief operation is the legacy of a system encountering its own fundamental limitation, the limitation that all signals intelligence systems encounter when the force they are monitoring has been designed and managed to produce the minimum radio traffic consistent with operational effectiveness, and when the force's planning has been completed before the monitoring began. The German intercept officers who analyzed Third Army traffic throughout December 1944 were doing their jobs correctly. The traffic analysis methodology they were applying is the methodology whose previous application had provided accurate intelligence about Third Army operations in September and October and November. The intelligence failures of December are not the failures of the methodology. They are the failures produced by the deliberate and systematic management of the information that the methodology depends on, by Patton's advanced planning, by Koch's intelligence discipline, by Maddox's planning security, by the communications officers who rotated call signs and frequency plans, and by the commanders who made their most critical decisions in person rather than by radio. The German signals intelligence system was well designed for the opponent it had been tracking through the autumn. The opponent it encountered in December had changed the information environment in ways that the well-designed system was not prepared to accommodate. This is the specific and operational legacy of what Patton did between December 12 and December 26. Not merely the relief of Bastogne, which is the outcome that history records, but the systematic and deliberate defeat of the intelligence system whose prediction of his intentions was the German command's primary tool for organizing the defense that would have stopped him. He beat the intelligence before he beat the defense. This is not a figure of speech. It is a sequential operational reality. The German command's ability to organize adequate blocking forces on the approaches to Bastogne from the south, to reinforce the 5th Parachute Division's blocking positions with the armored elements that might have been sufficient to stop the 4th Armored Division's advance before it reached the perimeter, depended on the German intelligence system providing the warning that would allow the reinforcement to be organized and moved into position before the relieving force arrived. The German intelligence system did not provide this warning in the time available, because the German radio intercept system was not able to provide the warning, because the information the warning would have required was not present in the radio traffic. The system was monitoring, because the Third Army's communications security had managed the radio traffic to prevent the information from being present. The chain is specific and documentable, and runs from Patton's decision on December 12 to begin contingency planning in communications silence, to Abrams's breakthrough at Assenois on December 26. Every link in the chain is the consequence of the previous link. The German radio intercept officers who have been doing their jobs correctly since September are still doing their jobs correctly on December 26 when Abrams reaches Assenois. They are just doing them in a communications environment that has been so thoroughly managed by an opponent who understood their methodology, that their correct performance of their jobs has produced intelligence that describes a force that is 40 miles from where the intelligence says it is, moving on a route that the intelligence has not predicted, toward an objective whose relief the intelligence has assessed as impossible on this timeline.